The story of Charles Oliveira is not merely a sports biography, it is a modern-day testament to the triumph of the human spirit over biological and social limitations. Imagine a child born into a world where the horizon is blocked by the sprawling, dense structures of a Brazilian favela, a place where the odds of escaping poverty are statistically microscopic. Now, imagine that same child being told he might never walk again. This is the foundation upon which the legend of Du Bronx was built. He started with nothing, faced a future of physical immobility, and yet, through sheer audacity, he transformed himself into the greatest finisher in the history of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC. Charles was born into the Vicente de Carvalho favela in Guarujá, Brazil. In these neighborhoods, life is a constant negotiation with hardship. Poverty and systemic violence are not headlines. They are the background noise of everyday existence. At the tender age of 7, while most children are beginning to explore their physical limits, Charles's world collapsed. He was diagnosed with severe rheumatoid arthritis and a debilitating heart murmur. The condition attacked his joints with savage consistency, leaving him in agonizing pain and threatening to fuse his mobility forever. Doctors were bleak. They feared he would be confined to a wheelchair. For the next 2 years, the hospital became his home. The sterile walls were a stark contrast to the vibrant, albeit dangerous, streets of the Bronx. His mother, Ozana, became his primary guardian and source of strength. A humble housekeeper, she sacrificed everything, sleeping on cold hospital floors for weeks on end, refusing to leave her son's side. His father, Francisco, was the silent engine of the family's survival, pulling double shifts at a slaughterhouse and hawking eggs at local markets just to fund the astronomical costs of Charles's treatments.
Eu nunca morei dentro de uma favela, morei 2, 3 ruas de uma favela. Minha mãe e meu pai não sabem nem ler nem escrever, meu pai sabe bem pouco. Meu pai e minha mãe trabalharam em 2 empregos. Minha mãe trabalhava de faxineira na escola e ela saía de lá e ia pra casa do dono da escola para trabalhar de faxineira. Meu pai trabalhou na feira como filante a vida inteira e trabalhava no matadouro. Então, qual que era a preocupação da minha mãe? O que os filhos iam ser? Então, minha mãe colocou a gente num monte de esporte, natação, judô, karatê, colocou tudo que podia ter oportunidade de colocar porque ela tinha medo do que os filhos poderiam ser, sabe? Pô, se eu deixar ele solto depois da escola, a gente não tá aqui. Fui criado pela minha avó, pelas minhas tias. Então, assim, minha mãe saía de manhã e chegava de noite. E aí eu me encontrei, depois de rodar nisso aí tudinho, o que eu me apaixonei foi pelo jiu-jitsu, com 12 anos de idade, sabe? O jiu-jitsu me ajudou, eu me apaixonei, eu me encontrei de tudo aquilo que eu fiz, eu falei, mano, é isso que eu quero.
Despite the weekly injections of benzathine and benzylpenicillin, treatments that were as painful as the disease itself, Charles clung to a singular hope. Against every medical prediction, he didn't just leave that hospital after 2 years. He walked out with a fire in his soul that would eventually scorch the world of mixed martial arts. At age 12, the trajectory of Charles's life shifted through an act of neighborly kindness. A man named Paulo, a neighbor who saw a spark in the frail boy, introduced him to Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Paulo wasn't just a friend, he was a visionary who recognized Charles's latent potential. He bought Charles his first GI and walked him to a local academy in Guarujá. The impact was instantaneous. Within 2 months, Charles was already outclassing opponents who had been training for years. However, the ghost of his illness remained. He was required to continue heavy medical treatments until he reached adulthood. The financial burden of elite training nearly ended his career before it began. Charles and his brother joined the Bronx Gold team, training under legends like Jorge Macaco Patino and Erickson Cardoso. When the family could no longer afford the fees, Paulo once again intervened, negotiating with the coaches to ensure Charles could continue his education in the gentle art for free. Tragically, the man who gave Charles his start never saw the fruits of his labor. Paulo passed away just 2 years after introducing Charles to the sport. Today, Charles carries Paulo's memory into every battle, viewing him as the guardian angel who steered him toward greatness. By 17, Charles was a phenom, winning prestigious tournaments in both his weight class and open weight divisions, proving that his technique and speed were truly generational. As the 2000s progressed, a new hunger began to grow within Charles. Jiu-jitsu was his foundation, but mixed martial arts, MMA, was the ultimate proving ground. He began training at the prestigious Shoot Box Academy, the legendary slaughterhouse that forged icons like Anderson Silva and Wanderlei Silva.
Eu nem falo mais um time, falo uma família, virar uma família de verdade, sabe? Os caras que, tipo, chora, vibra com você, tá? Você vê as entrevistas dos caras, vê os caras chorar, tipo, tá ligado? Os caras acreditam naquilo, é uns caras que, tipo, te cobra, briga também no momento que tem que brigar. Então, tipo, quando eu saí da minha antiga equipe, eu só fiquei com o macaco, só com a macaco de time, tá? E aí, tipo, não me cobrou de nada. Ele falou, mano, pensa, só respira, mano, tá ligado? Toma o caminho que você quer tomar e me fala o que você quer fazer. Ele, não, firmeza. E aí, tipo, eu demorei demais, porque, tipo, eu não sabia o que fazia, mano. E aí ele falou, mano, você não já foi no shootbox? Vai lá, tá, minha ex-mulher falou a mesma coisa. Falou, mano, por que você quer ir pros Estados Unidos? Você não gosta? Você não vai no shootbox e tal. E aí eu vim pro Lima. Quando eu cheguei aqui no Lima, cara, o cara não me cobrou nada, o cara não me falou de dinheiro, o cara não me chegou e falou de porcentagem, o cara não me falou nada. Simplesmente ele falou, mano, só treina aí, vê o que você acha, vê o que você gosta, se é isso mesmo que você quer.
O cara confia no trampo também.
Tá ligado?
Foda.
Falei, caralho, mas todas as outras equipes que eu falei, todo mundo falou de porcentagem, cara, de
primeira
dinheiro.
ideia, né?
Primeira ideia. Aqui não, falei, e aí os caras me abraçaram, mano. Eu não era campeão do UFC, tipo, eu era só mais um lá dentro.
On November 3, 2007, Charles made his amateur debut, needing only 15 seconds to secure an armbar victory. It was a sign of things to come. His professional debut was even more legendary. Competing at Predator FC, he fought 3 different men in a single night, finishing every single one of them. He became a terror on the Brazilian circuit, amassing an 11-0 record, with almost every win coming by way of a spectacular finish.
E aí, essa primeira luta sua?
Fui lutar no Rio de Janeiro, fizemos um bate e volta, fizemos uma loucura, mesmo. Entramos numa vanzinha, eu mais um bocado de cara e fomos pro Rio. Chegamos no Rio lá, já fomos roubados que, tipo, pô, olhei pra mim, o magrelão, o cara, mano, falei, esse cara não é do meu peso não, mano. Mas tá firmeza, né? E, tipo, lutei, graças a Deus, tive a oportunidade de ir lá de sair no armlock, finalizei o cara no segundo round. E aí, quando eu voltei, eu já fiz 3 lutas na noite no Predador, que era um GP até 77 quilos e eu não tinha nem 70 na época. E aí o macaco...
que é um GP?
Um GP são, tipo, pode ser de 2 lutas na noite, 3 lutas na noite, você tem que, tipo, vai ganhando e vai passando. 3 lutas na mesma noite. Se quebrar na primeira, se quebrar na segunda, se você for passando, você vai passando todo quebrado. Na onde que, tipo, lutei num GP, na onde que era até 77 quilos. Quem conhece de corte de peso sabe que quem luta de 77 deve ter, tipo, 90 e poucos quilos. Então os caras cortam pra 77.
De 90 pra 77.
Eu não tinha nem 70 quilos. Então eu já tava bem abaixo dos caras. Eu nunca tinha lutado MMA, eu só tinha feito uma amadora. E os caras já tinham feito várias lutas. Deus me abençoou, eu fui lá, nocauteei 2 e finalizei 1.
Caralho!
E eu só sabia jiu-jitsu.
The UFC could no longer ignore the kid from the favela. On August 8, 2010, a 20-year-old Charles Oliveira stepped into the octagon for the first time against Darren Elkins. He submitted Elkins in the first round, announced his arrival with a submission of the night bonus, and followed it up with another highlight reel win over Efrain Escudero. However, the climb to the top is rarely a straight line. Charles hit a period of turbulence that would have broken a lesser man. He suffered his first defeat at the hands of Jim Miller, followed by a series of inconsistent performances against veterans like Donald Cowboy, Cerrone, and Frankie Edgar. Doubts began to swirl. Critics labeled him fragile, or suggested he lacked the mental toughness to win the big one. After a brutal TKO loss to Max Holloway in 2015 and a series of missed weight cuts, Charles made a career-altering decision in 2017. He would leave the featherweight division behind and move up to the 155-pound lightweight division. When Charles moved to lightweight, his record stood at a modest 10 wins and 8 losses in the UFC. He was viewed as a talented journeyman, not a future king. But in June 2018, something clicked. He defeated Clay Guida, sparking an unprecedented 11-fight win streak that would redefine the lightweight landscape. He wasn't just winning, he was dismantling the division's elite. One by one, the contenders fell. Christos Giagos, Jim Miller, avenging his earlier loss, David Tamer, and Kevin Lee. By the time he faced Tony Ferguson in December 2020, Charles was a different animal. He dominated Ferguson, a man once considered the boogeyman of the division, for 3 rounds of technical mastery. The world finally saw what Charles already knew. He was the best in the world. The pinnacle arrived on May 15, 2021. With the lightweight title vacant, Charles faced the explosive Michael Chandler. The first round was a nightmare. Chandler dropped Charles and nearly finished him. The old Charles might have folded, but the man who survived rheumatoid arthritis wasn't going anywhere. Early in the second round, Charles landed a perfect left hook that sent Chandler reeling. He swarmed with a flurry of strikes until the referee stepped in. The kid from the Bronx was finally the UFC champion. He proved his championship medal by defending the belt against Dustin Poirier in a gritty back-and-forth war, eventually securing a rear-naked choke in the third round. But drama followed Charles even at the top. In May 2022, ahead of his defense against Justin Gaethje, Charles missed weight by a heartbreaking half-pound. He was stripped of his title on the scale, a move that sparked worldwide controversy. Despite the heartbreak, Charles entered the cage and submitted Gaethje in the first round, proving to the world that even without the physical belt, he was the uncrowned king of the lightweights.
O que você acha do Justin Gaethje como lutador? Você olhando de fora, onde ele é bom, alguma brecha de repente você possa adiantar, mas o que você vê dele como atleta?
Cara, é um cara duríssimo, tem uma mão muito pesada, é um cara que anda pra frente o tempo inteiro, é um cara que gosta de brigar, ele é um brigador, ele gosta de levantar a mão e sair na porrada, né? É um cara que pega duro de mão, né? É um cara que merece todo o respeito do mundo, como eu também respeito todos os lutadores, né? Tá ali entre os top 5 do mundo, né? É difícil sair dali, é um cara que anda pra frente o tempo inteiro, é um cara que tem um wrestling bom, é um cara que tem um boxe, acho que creio que é isso, que é um boxe muito duríssimo, tem uma mão muito pesada, né? Mas de verdade, você sabe, eu sempre sou um pé no chão, um cara que tem um respeito, uma humildade gigantesca. Eu não tô preocupado quem é que tá do outro lado, e sim com aquilo que eu posso levar pra dentro do octógono. Se a gente for falar, ele ganhou de 2 caras, ele perdeu pra o dois Sport, foi o cara que lutou com ele, nocauteou ele, eu lutei com o dois Sport, tomei as mesmas pancadas que ele tomou e andei pra frente o tempo inteiro, né? Eu tenho a minha mão pesada, o cara que ele lutou, que se quebrou 3 Audi, que foi o Michael Chandler, eu nocauteei de mão esquerda. Então é assim, acho que o top da coisa é eu estar bem, estar feliz, sabendo que do outro lado tem um cara duríssimo, que merece todo o respeito do mundo, mas que o campeão tem nome, se chama Charles Oliveira, e é isso.
The momentum hit a wall in October 2022, when Charles traveled to Abu Dhabi to face Islam Makhachev. In a clash of styles, Makhachev's wrestling-heavy approach neutralized Charles's jiu-jitsu, resulting in a second-round submission loss. For the first time in 5 years, the Du Bronx train had been derailed. Yet, true to his life story, Charles refused to stay down. He returned in June 2023 to face Beneil Dariush, who was riding an 8-fight winning streak. Many expected Dariush to grind Charles out, but Oliveira had other plans. He looked faster and sharper than ever, ending the fight with a devastating TKO in the first round. It was a loud reminder that he was still the premier threat in the division. The road since then has been a roller coaster of high-stakes drama. A scheduled rematch with Makhachev was cancelled after Charles suffered a horrific cut over his eye just days before the fight. Instead, he faced the rising contender Arman Tsarukyan at the historic UFC 300. In a razor-thin split decision that could have gone either way, Charles narrowly lost, though his performance reinforced his status as an elite contender. Most recently, in August, he settled the score once again with Michael Chandler, winning a dominant unanimous decision that showcased his evolved striking and veteran composure. Today, the landscape of the UFC is shifting once more. The lightweight throne is a seat of constant contention, and a new name has emerged to challenge the old guard: Ilia Topuria. The undefeated featherweight champion has signaled his intent to move up in weight and claim a second title, setting the stage for a collision that fans have dreamed of. Topuria represents the new era, young, powerful, and brimming with a confidence that borders on arrogance. He is a precise striker with knockout power in both hands and a wrestling background that makes him a nightmare for almost anyone. But he has never faced someone like Charles "Do Bronx" Oliveira. This is not just a fight. It is a battle for the soul of the division. For Topuria, beating Charles would be the ultimate validation, the final jewel in a crown that would make him a global superstar. The octagon door clicked shut, sealing the two legends inside a pressurized vacuum of anticipation. For Charles "Do Bronx" Oliveira, this was more than a title fight. It was a reclamation of the throne he never truly felt he lost. As the first round began, the stylistic clash became a visceral reality. Topuria took the center with the compact, predatory movements of a modern knockout artist. He didn't just throw punches, he fired calibrated missiles, testing the air just inches from Oliveira's chin. Oliveira, however, moved with the fluid, chaotic grace of a man who had lived 1,000 lives inside the cage. He didn't retreat, he flowed, his 74-inch reach keeping the younger challenger at bay with stinging front kicks and razor-sharp elbows, reminding the young champion that the old guard still held the keys to the kingdom. He is the man who holds the records. He is the man with the most finishes, the most submissions, and perhaps the biggest heart in the history of the octagon. He doesn't fight for fame or for the cameras. He fights for the kid in the hospital bed who was told he'd never walk. He fights for the memory of Paulo and the sacrifice of Ozana. The lightweight division is a shark tank, but Charles Oliveira is the apex predator who learned to swim in the deepest, darkest waters of the Brazilian favelas. Whether he is the champion on paper or the champion in the hearts of the fans, one thing is certain. You can never count out a man who has already beaten every obstacle life could throw at him. The crown doesn't make the king. The journey does. And the journey of Charles Oliveira is far from over. He remains a symbol of resilience, a legendary finisher, and an MMA icon whose legacy is etched in blood, sweat, and the unwavering belief that anything is possible if you have the audacity to chase it. As we look toward the next chapter, the question isn't whether Charles can win the belt back. It's how much more history he can write before he finally hangs up the gloves. In a sport of giants, the boy who couldn't walk has become the man no one can run from. This is the era of Do Bronx, and the world is still watching in awe.